right. Hope everyone's having a nice morning today. I know I am. I spent a little time outside. It's a nice day. It's not too hot yet. Just waiting for a few more people to kind of filter in, and then I'll get started here. All right. I'll go ahead and jump right in. Good afternoon. I'm Allison Lester, the Associate Director of Visitor and Member Engagement, and I'm coming to you live. Not quite from the Heard Museum, but we are from the Heard Museum Institution, and I'd like to welcome you to today's virtual art talk and studio visit with this year's Best of Show winners, Juanita Growing Thunder Fogarty and her daughter Jessa Rae Growing Thunder. I'm going to go over a few housekeeping items. Today's event is a webinar, which means you can only hear and see from the panelists. The chat box is open. Just make sure you select everyone if you'd like your comments to be seen by more than just me and the panelists. Or if you do have any technical issues, just reply directly to the panelists and we'll help you out. At the very end of the discussion, I'll come back to open the Q&A, but you're welcome to submit your questions at any time. If you have any technical difficulties, you can call our main line, and I'm going to drop that as the first comment here in just a moment. We'll also have a brief survey for you at the conclusion of the event. They've been so great to kind of help us with these programs, and we've really, really appreciated your valuable feedback. So the webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel in about a week, usually up a few days later, but about a week at the latest. You can go watch any of our other previous virtual art talks there as well. Today's discussion will be moderated by our Chief Curator, Diana Pardue. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn this over to Diana, who will introduce the rest of our panelists, and I'll see everyone again for the Q&A.
Allison, thank you. We're joined today by Juanita Growing Thunder Fogarty and her daughter, Jessa Rae Growing Thunder. Both of these incredible artists have exquisite soft sculptures in the exhibition at the Heard Grand Procession. The collection is from Charles and Valerie Diker. We're most grateful to them for allowing us to show this incredible exhibit. Both Juanita and Jessa Rae have been doing beadwork since they were children, and both will tell us some more about that today, and they will tell us possibly about growing up in a household in a community that honors tradition, and also in which beadwork plays an important role. Both Juanita and Jessa Rae have won numerous awards at the Heard Fair Market and at Santa Fe Market, and this year Juanita won the Best of Show Award, and we congratulate her for that, and we're so grateful that that is now in the permanent collection at the Heard Museum. We also want to mention that Jessa Rae is a PhD candidate at UC Davis, and she's working on that as well. So we're glad that they could take time to do this program today. Thank you so much, Juanita and Jessa Rae, for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you for having us. Hamatakiapi, betu washte, shukina duza homia imakiapi, chante washte yuha shujapi. Good day to all our relations in the room. My name is Jessa Rae Growing Thunder. This is my mom, Juanita. We come from the Buffalo Nation. We come from the Fort Peck, Assiniboine and Sioux Reservation in the far northeast corner of Montana. We are Sisitua, Wapetua, Dakota, and Wadobanatua, Nakota. We're really happy to be here today. We thank you all for joining us. This is always a really exciting thing to be able to do these things virtually now, where we get to reach such a diverse audience. So we're really looking forward to today's conversation. If I can just go ahead, I think today we wanted to start with showing some images of our work to kind of talk about a little bit more about us, our background, to kind of give a good foundation for today's talk. Did you want to introduce yourself, Mom, or say anything?
Oh,
I just jumped right in.
You're absolutely fine.
So we come from a family of beadworkers. I always acknowledge that I'm a third generational artist as the granddaughter. Juanita is my mom and my grandmother is Joyce Growing Thunder Fogarty. But really, I think that, really this extends far further back than that. Like we're probably really 7th generation beadwork and quillwork artists. And you know, it's been a really fortunate experience to grow up in a family who supports the arts and who supports these knowledges and these traditions, and really work every single day to do what we do. You know, that's a real blessing, and that's something really special, especially living in a contemporary world where, you know, all of us as human beings are pulled in multiple directions. So we're traditional Northern Plains beadwork and quillwork artists. We are completely immersed in traditional arts. So on the screen, y'all will see 2 examples of our work. On the right hand, you see a porcupine quilled horse mask that was actually done by my mom. If you want to say a few words about what we see here.
Just keeping in the traditions of making horse masks. My mother has made many horse masks, as her grandmothers did. This one is mainly porcupine quill work with the edge beaded with antique seed beads. And the design, I called the whole piece Life Giver, because it has everything to do with living on the plains and finding water. You'll see dragonflies around the eyes. And if you saw a dragonfly on the plains when you were living, you knew that there was water nearby. So you knew that could sustain life. And that's the whole theme of the horse mask. Everything on it represents something that has to do with sustaining life.
And this horse mask is actually, it was a commissioned piece by the Smithsonian National Museum of American Indian for the exhibit, Song for a Horse Nation?
Yes.
And it's been shown in multiple exhibitions since then. And on the left-hand screen, you'll see another collaboration that is actually a 3-generational piece, and it includes work by my grandmother Joyce, my mom Juanita, and myself. And so this piece right here was commissioned by NMAI as well for their exhibit Identity by Design, and has gone on to travel with multiple exhibitions worldwide. And it's a good, you know, I really like throwing these examples up when we kind of give a foundation of what we do as traditional artists, because these pieces really speak to what we know to be, you know, traditional arts, and what, you know, we feel, you know, are doing their jobs in keeping our culture and these knowledges alive. So this is a fully beaded women's Northern buckskin. So the dress is completely beaded. It's very heavy. It's actually made to fit me. And so, you know, I'm 5'5", and so it's fully beaded. All of the accessories, the breastplate going down the front, you know, you'll see those kind of like cross symbols. Those are stars. And so that entire piece going down the front, that is porcupine quill work. And quill work is something that we'll talk about in a little bit when we start talking about our process. So all of the accessories done on the front, on the back, are all, you know, fully done in beadwork and quillwork. It's a massive piece, an extensive piece that is, you know, a very traditional example of our type of work. Just to kind of give you some more context of the soft sculptures, especially if y'all are local and get a chance, please go check out the exhibit at the Herd, the Grand Procession show. And these are some examples of what we mean when we talk about soft sculptures. These kind of really range from, you know, what, 18 inches tall?
18 to probably around 24 inches tall. Them and getting pretty tall.
Mm-hmm. And so everything on them, you know, these are really just replicas of, you know, we hyper focus, you know, every piece, every soft sculpture piece, you know, hyper focuses on a specific era. And so we focus in on this era, and we do everything as historically accurate from that era as we possibly can. It's just all miniaturized. And so instead of having like a normal size bead, which we'll show you today, you know, these are all done in micro antique seed beads. You know, we're talking beads that look like sand, really. And so these are all just, you know, they're really good examples of how we would dress from that specific era. And so my mom and my grandma have actually been doing these types of pieces for decades now, really. And you know, they've really kind of turned into this whole genre of fine art, and it's really exciting to see. I actually started working on collaboration with my mom and my grandma on these soft sculpture pieces as a teenager. And it was really a learning experience for me, because every time I'm able to collaborate with them on a soft sculpture, it's, you know, I'm learning how to do, you know, certain aspects of our regalia just in miniature form. And so I'm learning all of these new techniques, and, you know, how things properly go together, and how to construct things, how to lay out patterns, how to do all of these things. I'm just doing it in miniature form. But then later on in my life, if I need to make a life-size something, I'll have all of that knowledge. And so here's some more examples. Of course, on the right-hand screen, another soft sculpture that is actually in the Grand Procession show. His name is Buffalo Chaser. He's a collaboration piece that my mom and I did. I couldn't even tell you the year, and I am so sorry for that. I feel like I've lost 2 years in the pandemic, so I don't even know what year it is now. And then on the left-hand screen, we have a really good example of a quillwork piece. And this is actually an antique doctor's bag that was done by my mom. And if you want to say anything about this piece.
Oh, it was, I was lucky enough to find an antique piece that had all brass fittings, and I thought that was really unique. And so I really wanted to make a fancy doctor's bag. And I used porcupine quill work on the majority of it, and I also used micro size seed beads, size 16s, for Dakota floral work on the sides. And we really try to use materials that would be found, you know, in the later 1800s, early 1900s when we do our pieces. So we have silk ribbons and tin cones and brass bells and things like that. So
all of the great details.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like if you know, y'all are signing on today, like I really encourage you to be attending art shows like the Herd, like Santa Fe New Market, because, you know, pictures are really great and everything, but to be able to experience these pieces in person and to really, you know, be able to see all of the details and kind of get immersed in that experience of being in their presence, I think really, you know, and that goes with all art. You know, we all know that, you know, art is always best, you know, visited in person. So I encourage you all, you know, to get out there and to really, you know, attend these art shows to get experience in that. And then, of course, there she is. We to kind of take a few minutes before we, you know, dive in and we talk, you know, more hands-on experience about our process. You know, we wanted to really talk more about this year's Best of Show piece at the Herd, which was my mom's, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
I'll let you. Jessa is sort of my sounding board, and so it was pandemic, and I always, you know, was chit-chatting with her on the phone, and I said, I'm going to do this show, and it's virtual, and I really wanted to try to do something to recognize that this wasn't our first go around with a pandemic, and that our people have survived these for a long time. And I was just asking her, like, what do you know, bouncing ideas off of her. And I said, well, you know, I didn't really want to acknowledge COVID because I was kind of really upset with it still.
It's still all really fresh for all of us.
Yeah. But I thought, you know, I really needed to say, I felt like I should say something that, you know, we've endured these before, and we're going to come out on the other end okay.
And I thought that was really important, that she wanted to draw, you know, not just on the devastating impacts that COVID has had on all of us, but especially Native and Indigenous communities, because we've been hit drastic with our fatalities. And but she wanted to acknowledge like the strengths behind that, you know, Indigenous peoples, you know, we have always been resilient, and we're going to make it through this. And, some of the things that are going to help us get through this are our knowledges, our own knowledge systems. And so when she said that she wanted to kind of focus in on that and to acknowledge, we've been here before, we've made it through, we're going to be okay. We'll make it through this. I was all aboard for it. I was so excited. I was so thrilled.
And so I just bounced a few ideas off her, like, well, one of the main thing was that I deviated from doing totally traditional was I added the COVID that she's standing on, this, the virus. And I usually don't intermix my traditional things with modern things. I'll keep them really separated, but this time I feel like it was saying something that I had to do, acknowledge that, yeah, we're going to own this and stand on this because we've been here before and we stood on viruses before.
And so what she means is at the base, her moccasins are standing on that. That's actually a fully beaded depiction of the COVID virus. And then around it, she has other pandemics just listed, like, of course, the introduction of smallpox, which was first introduced to Indigenous peoples in 1680. But we've seen multiple waves of smallpox devastate various communities and geographical territories. And of course, the Spanish flu of 1912, and, now COVID-19. And those are just like a few examples. Like, she really went back and forth about, like, what do I really include on there? Because, we could go through an entire list and, even thinking about, my grandmother, she had tuberculosis as a kid. And so, her, being here for COVID-19, she was always telling us, this is the second time in my life I've had to wear a mask, and I've had to kind of live with this fear of what will happen. And so even thinking about, these other illnesses that have, devastated Indigenous peoples like TB. And so, she selected, smallpox and Spanish flu and of course COVID as just like some examples of these things. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then throughout the piece, I tried to put on just things that we use traditionally to ward off sicknesses and stuff. So she actually has a ledger wrap around her dress that
around
has
her waist,
under her belt, and it has I drew little replicas of our traditional medicines on there, as just, that's what we've been using all along in this pandemic. And then she's holding woman sage, and she's also holding cedar, and those are some of the things that we burn to purify our air. And
she of course has like the quilled breastplate going down, and those are all in micro porcupine quills. Like those are like tiny porcupine quills that she has done that in. And then of course her dress. I mean, her dress I think is what really amazes people. And here in a bit we can show you an example. Those are actually miniature pennies. And do you want to tell them about the penny dress?
The penny dress was traditionally used for young women in the Sioux tribe, and there are also ceremonies and songs that go along with that, and that's to help our young women understand that they have to live in the two worlds, in the modern world and live in our traditional world. So they have to carry those two values with them throughout their lifetime. And then I thought that spoke to the resilience too, so it gives us strength.
And then of course our face mask.
So
that's all done in miniature micro seed beads.
The tiniest ones that I have, yeah, those are, I would say like the smallest one is probably a 24, and they're super fine little beads. And that was fun to make. And I was really inspired by all of the other Native artists that I saw, on social media and stuff, doing all their face masks. And I thought, well, I'll give a nod to that. And it was sort of a playful thing for me to do with that.
All right, we wanted to go ahead and turn it over so that we can start showing you some of our process. Let's see, can you all see me? Am I?
Yes, yes, we can see you.
Okay, okay, great. And so we actually had some examples. So, and this is always one of those things where like micros are kind of a little hard to show, but so this is a regular size penny. And then on the doll, she put miniature size pennies. And so you can kind of see the difference there. Like when we say miniature, they are miniature. And hopefully when she is up on display, y'all can go visit her and kind of see all of these miniature details. Yeah. All right. Let's see. I'm just trying to turn it on so we can actually see ourselves. So excuse me. Do you want to go ahead and start talking about?
Oh, so we are just now going to start preparing. Well, we've been preparing for quite a while to do a couple of collaboration pieces that we're working on. And I brought along many things that we have to do to get prepared to do these things. So this is like a big part of what we do is prepare and our preparation of our materials. So all of our, like we have porcupine quills and we're picking those because we're going to be making a quilled piece. And these quills I've been working on for about a year. I had to obtain all the quills, and then I prepare them by washing them and somewhat sorting them, and I get them in bulk, so they're all different sizes, and then I have to prepare them to be dyed and stuff. So it's a long process. It's taken me all of the pandemic year to get this far with them.
It's yeah. And just to kind of backstep to make sure that we're being clear with everybody. Porcupine quillwork is a really, really beautiful art form because it's a truly indigenous art form. Before we had seed beads, which were brought through trade, we had porcupine quillwork. And so when our women were given the gift to create art, it was the gift to do quillwork. And so everything about it was immersed in a woman's knowledge of her natural environment. Women had to know how to get the porcupine quills off of the porcupine. In most cases, in all the stories that you hear, they wouldn't even kill the porcupine, right? It was a matter of kind of tricking him and getting him to shoot out his quills for them. And all of the colors that were used were coming from the land, so our porcupine quillworkers had to know which plants and which roots and which flowers, like which berries, all did different colors.
Grasses,
yeah. And grasses, like they had to know the natural environment, and they were immense knowledge keepers. And so we're talking pre-colonization, that all of these extensive knowledge systems are in play. And then when we start to see seed beads come in through trade, it was actually the quill workers that started using the seed beads. And so they started incorporating, and you can look at historic pieces and you can kind of see those pivotal moments in which, they start slowly introducing seed beads, along the edges, along the borders, to kind of give those extra details to their otherwise quilled pieces. And then they start to really kind of lean more heavily on the beadwork, still intermixing them, and eventually a lot just focused on just quillwork itself. And so that's kind of like the progression that we see with specifically Ochete Shikawi women's art forms. Thinking about Assiniboine Sioux, thinking about Dakota, Lakota, Nakota relatives, And so, you know, quill work is always an amazing art form to witness and to appreciate and to support. And it is such an extensive process, like she was explaining, you know, to be able to get the quills, wash them, care for them, dye them, and then there's the long process as well of sorting them.
Yeah, I would say that there's probably 3/4 of the time that you spend on a piece that you're quill working with is preparation. And prepping everything is a lot of work. And that's what I kind of wanted to just talk about that this
go ahead.
This time. And you know, we're talking about we're getting our pieces geared up. And so we need to be sorting our quills and getting those all ready to go. And then just obtaining these things and getting them prepped is what takes the longest time. And then even things like getting like the small shells ready to go for the dolls and things like we have Dentalium shells up here in the corner. That takes a lot of prep time too, because we have to clean those and then size them so that they're the right size for the dolls that we're going to be using. So we'll be snipping those off and making them probably about half that size.
Mm-hmm. And so the Dentalium shells were actually another really remarkable material used on the Northern Plains, because these actually come from, you know, the West Coast. And so it was something that we were able to get through trade routes as well.
And so they're really a symbol of wealth when you see shells on our pieces and stuff. It took a lot for them to trade to get the shells from the ocean to the plains. Mm-hmm. So, and then some more prep work that we have to do is that we're going to be making, should we tell them what we're doing, our male doll that we're going to be working on?
We got several projects that we're always in juggle of. So we have one of the projects that we have started and that we're working on right now is I was really fortunate to do some work on the Carl Bodmer show that was co-curated by the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Joslin Museum. And so throughout this process of you know, talking with the curators and talking about the importance and the significance of Carl Bodmer, especially when we, as traditional artists, you know, are able to use those historic depictions of our people for soft sculptures. You know, my mom and I got really, really excited, and, you know, my grandma, like, you know, to think about, you know, well, let's do another doll that is kind of inspired from these early, you know, really pre-reservation.
Yeah, they're pre-reservation, and it's before the pandemics.
It's before smallpox, especially thinking about, you know, Carl Bodmer traveling up the Missouri, you know, and his time spent with the Assiniboines it was just, you know, just a few years before a devastating smallpox epidemic hit Assiniboine people. And so he was really kind of spent time with the Assiniboines in this really beautiful moment in our history. And so we've been really inspired by that. And so we're working on another soft sculpture that's inspired from that time period. So it's been really exciting.
And so we're getting all the prep work done for that doll. And so it's been a lot of fun. So right now I'm cutting buckskin strings, and these are going to be in preparation for making quilled hair strings for our war shirt that we're going to dress him in. Mm-hmm. And so it's all time consuming. So we have to split all of these and stretch them out, get the stretch out of them. And then we're going to have to like prep the hair and the quills and everything just to do a detail on the shirt. And then so I've been spending the past few months, when we decided, got all hyped up about doing this project, I had to source materials, and I had to source materials through the internet, which I usually don't like to do. I like to buy in person, so I make sure I'm getting the best quality of what I can get. So I like to hit up the trading posts and the furriers myself. But I was lucky enough, I found some summer ermine on the internet.
What do you mean summer?
So a summer ermine is, they have brown fur And in the wintertime, they turn white so that they can camouflage themselves. But I like to use the summer ermine on the soft sculpture pieces so that they imitate like our otter furs and beaver furs and things like that. So it's small, delicate hairs. And so these pieces actually I'm going to be using along with my porcupine quills that are porcupine claws that I sourced also to make them a big replica grizzly claw necklace to go on this Bodmer doll. So I'm very excited about it.
And so a lot of the process that we're doing right now is the sorting of the quills and everything. And where's your really great example you had earlier?
This is my perfect quill I found right away. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's a really good example of a perfect size quill that I'd want to get. Now that doesn't always work out because these are natural organic things. And sometimes when I've been using the same batch of quills for a while, I won't ever find anything like this. So this is like, so I was so happy to see this. And there are a lot in this batch that are around the same size, but sometimes I get really short quills and I make do, I'll use them. And I save all my quills too, the pieces that I'm using. I just like I save my beads that don't get used. I will use them in other pieces, or if I need to just have one color that's different, I can go back and use my little quill pieces that I have.
And so the ideal quill that she's talking about is a nice thin,
long, so that I could do 3, possibly 4 wraps on something if you're wrapping, or even if you're applique stitching quills.
Yeah, because the longer the quill is, like the
faster you can go.
Yeah, the faster you can go because the more ground you can cover with it.
And then it's really time consuming when you have to change out the quills. That takes a long time to do. So you'd have to get another quill prepped and ready to go.
So I'm just kind of sitting here, I'm picking out what I think are thin, but then I'm like, okay, well, these ones over here are a lot thinner. I'm using tweezers. You can kind of like decipher what tools work best, but tweezers always seem to be a go ahead. So I have like, different piles of thinness, where I'm like, oh, those are really nice and thin, but they're not as thin as these ones over here. And that kind of comes in handy later on when you're working through different parts of the dolls. So let's see, what can I put these against? Where's your really good quill here? Hopefully we can see that. That's the perfect ideal quill right there. How many inches would you say that is?
About 2.5 inches.
I found this really great one, but then there's like a bend in it. Look at how long that bad boy is.
You could still use that though.
I'll put that aside. So, and then, after we work through the piles of sorting all the different sizes, you'll kind of end up with varying sizes and piles to kind of work from. And then it's the process of, you always make sure that you cut your tips off. We never work with the tips on.
Oh, I don't ever do that. They're quite dangerous and they hurt. They hurt a lot if you get stabbed with them. And you just learn to have a light touch with them. It's not.
The more time you spend with them, the more natural it feels.
Yeah. And then what else can we talk about?
You got some great examples sitting up there.
I have some tiny examples of, I'm going to be doing some miniature cradles. And so this is going to be my example for a softback cradle. You can kind of see a full-size cradle behind me.
And that one has backboards, so that's not this.
It's not the same style, but it's a baby keeper anyway. So also the top part of it, and then it'll have a back tongue piece that comes off the top that I haven't made yet. And so it'll be round shaped like that. And I'll put a little baby doll in there. And hopefully I'll have a bunch of them done. I don't know. We'll see if I can get these ones finished. And then
What about this one?
this one is going to be one with the backboards. So we have a doll size cradle board that we have that's similar. And each backboard we make for these things we do that ourselves, and they're different shapes and sizes every time. Everything is organic, so it's kind of, we have to wait until we finish a piece to see how big the boards are going to be. We don't really ever know ahead of time.
Out here winging it. So this is an example. This is a toy cradle board. So this would be, it's really inspired by some historic pieces that you see that are meant for young girls to be playing with. And so that's what they're really inspired of. But this one right here is actually made with the micro seed beads. And you can kind of see, like, when we say, micro, here, you hold that. So these would be like a normal size, like these normal size. So these are 11s, 11, 12 seem to be like, the normal size seed beads. But what we're working with here are all micros that are really, they look like sand. That's what I always tell people. Yeah. It's like working with sand.
Yeah.
And so this entire cradle board is done in micro beads.
Size 16.
Size 16s.
17 is the background.
Yeah.
I know because when I sourced those beads, I actually went to New York and climbed around in a basement of a bead store. And the shelving of this little tiny, you went down these little tiny stairs into this old building. Like, I couldn't even believe I was down. They let me go down there. And I came, my friend was with me, and she brought a suitcase, and I go, what are you bringing that suitcase for? And she goes, well, you never know. And sure enough, we found all these little tiny seed beads down there. And so the suitcase worked out fine. So I hauled my beads around New York in a suitcase, and it was quite fun.
Because that's the thing, is everybody always wants to know, well, where do you get your beads from? Where do you get all of your supplies from? And really, it's everywhere. It is absolutely anywhere and everywhere. Like, you can find materials in the most obscure places. You're not even going to be able to really see these virtually, and I apologize for that. These are micro.
Put the ones next to it.
Oh,
show them.
That's smart.
Yeah.
So hopefully you can kind of see that, that blue, you could clearly see that those are beads. Whereas, the micro beads, they almost look like, when you start doing the beadwork, they almost look like it's painted, because, it takes your eyes a minute to adjust to actually recognize, like, those are actually beads. There's texture there. Yeah. Where did you get that one?
Oh, it's okay. We can leave it out.
Okay. So, we kind of just really pick up things anywhere we can.
Yeah.
And my mom is right. Like, being in the pandemic and being virtual with everything, like, it's been a challenge, definitely. Trying to navigate things and trying to find hide. Do you want to pick up your hide right here?
Let me get my.
So everything that we bead on is done on buckskin. And so here's an example.
So this is a deer hide, brain tanned deer hide.
So you can see, like, these are the legs. Those are the legs right there.
Yeah.
Here's the neck. And so it's done all naturally, all hand tanned.
And it's super soft,
super thin. And we always use the best materials that we can ever find. So that requires, the best buckskin we can find out there, brain tan, smoked, which is going to be a darker color.
This is a light smoked here, and you can see the difference between the white and the light.
So when you smoke the hide, it gives it a nice kind of brown, smoky color, which also has a really great smell to it.
And it's also good for keeping things a long time without having any insects or anything get into it, because they don't like the smoke smell.
Yeah.
So it kind of cures everything.
Yeah. We have like a gazillion things going at once. I know somebody will have a question about needles. You know, when you're working with micro seed beads, you know, what needles do you use? And I apologize because these are going to be too small to see virtually, and I apologize for that. But it's also a process to even use a basic needle and thread to be doing beading when you're talking about using micro seed beads.
There are 3 needles on there.
There's 3 needles here. I don't know that you will be able to see this. And so these are size 16s. These aren't made anymore. So when you see them, you get them. And it's a process of, you know, knowing what size that you're working with, you know, whether it's an 18, you know, that a size 18 is going to be bigger than a size 24. The higher the number, the smaller the bead. And so, you know, if you're working with a size 24 or even a 26, really, like it's a process of holding them up to the light and looking through the eye of the needle, which is where your thread goes, and figuring out, you know,
which one is thinner,
what's your smallest eye hole that you can find.
And we go through our packs of needles like this all the time. And you can hold it up. We hold it up to the sunlight, right? I got the sunlight right there. And so I can see, and I see that this one is a smaller needle than this one. So that's how, I mean, it's like things that you didn't really ever think of that you would have to do to use these tiny beads.
But you don't ever throw out the needles that you can't use right now. No. We never throw anything out, even the beads that aren't going to fit on that smallest eye hole. You don't toss those. Like, we continue to hold on to them because who knows, maybe we'll find a smaller eye hole one day.
Yeah. So I have a whole pack of needles that I have at my house, and I have a little skull and crossbones drawn on them. And I'm like, I wrote on there big eyes. And that's so I know, like, I don't use that for the tiny stuff. That's my, you know, I can use them for size 16 seed beads, but just little things that keep us busy.
And everybody works differently. And it's so funny because, like, my grandma, when she works, she will string up like multiple needles and threads, and like she'll make her thread really, really, really long. Yeah. And she'll pin them in the curtain next to her seat or something, or like pin them on the couch or like somewhere. She'll put them right there so they're right next to her. So that way she doesn't have to stop more often to switch out her needle and thread when she runs out. Whereas, like, I'm the type of person, I can't work with like big long threads like that. No. Like, I get tangles and then it just slows my entire process down. But like, it always amazes me that she can do that. Yeah.
A lot of things that she does amazes us. We try to keep up with her, but my mother is still a prolific bead worker and quill worker, and she works every day. Every minute of every day that she has a spare minute, she's working.
And I always tell people, you know, my mom and my grandma don't take days off. And, you know, they don't vacation. You know, she traveled to be here with me this weekend. And I had to explain to people, you know, even when they travel, they have a suitcase full of beads and quills and material. Like, that's how they travel. It doesn't matter where they're going. They always have a bag full of stuff to be working on. Just as long as there's something little being done every day, like that's their contribution. And so when I tell people, like, every single day, it is every single day.
Yeah. We work on stuff every day.
I just recently started documenting their suitcases. So I think from now on, every time I see them travel, I'm going to take pictures of their suitcases so that you can see all.
Well, yeah, and usually I don't travel with quills in a suitcase, but this time I did. They made it fine.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, oh, I hope they don't check my bag. I was thinking, those poor guys, I should have put a warning sign in there, I was thinking.
Right, because they're sharp.
Yeah.
They are sharp. And these ones have a little bit of padding in them because there's some of the hair in there.
Oh, and that's something that I like to do because my mother's always done that, is we leave some of the hair in there when we're dyeing them and processing them, because it's cushion and it kind of separates them so that you're able to pick them better. You can see them because because the hair will push them in different directions and stuff. And so you're able to see them, the perfect quill. I see one right there. Boom. Another perfect one. And so we really try to work every day. And my mother has always let me understand that it's not about us. It's not about us when we're working on things and making these things. We get excited and we think, oh, this is so much fun, and we're proud of what we do. But we have the understanding that this is part of our history and that we're helping to help it live and preserve it. And hopefully we can inspire some younger people to pick it up and enjoy and keep our traditions alive. You know, and we always try to do things. My mom is a stickler for this, is like, do it the right way. Don't take a shortcut.
Yeah.
You do things the right way. It may take a little longer, she said, but you take the time, tie everything off and make sure it's done right and correct. And always use the best materials that you can find and that you can come across. And do the best that you can do. Mm-hmm. And that's not for ourselves. That's for our culture. Mm-hmm. And for our history. And so it carries on, and hopefully it will.
And that's the thing, really, is like, you know, these knowledges, you know, when you have these knowledges, there's a responsibility there. You know, it's a responsibility to make sure that you're caring for these knowledges and that you're respecting them and that you are doing whatever you can to help preserve them and to teach others. And, you know, like, you know, that's what we see done in my family. You know, I'm the oldest of, you know, 24 grandkids, and, you know, I have a lifetime of knowledge just because I've always watched them do this, and they take the time to explain things to me and to teach me and to tell me so that I can tell my daughter and I can tell my grandkids, and you know, this extends outwards for future generations. So when we talk about the responsibilities we have, that's, you know, it's in practice. Absolutely. And it's very, very meditative.
It does. It's calming to do things, and it's my mom always tells me it's good for your mind because you get to go through everything. And you know, we do spend a lot of time by ourselves, and a lot of times it is a big sacrifice, because I've missed many years not getting to go to powwows and stuff because I have you know, trying to finish a piece, and so I'll stay home and finish the piece instead, just because it's important to me to get things done. And we work long hours. We work very long hours.
I'm coming back on here because I thought of a question and I couldn't wait to ask.
Okay.
You know, you're talking, of course, if the eye of the needle is big, it won't go through the bead. But what kind of thread do you use? Because is it silk thread? Is it cotton? Is it polyester?
Yeah, we're using Nymo threads, because that's what we can find. That's the smallest. And this one is a double-aught thread, and that fits most of the needles. You probably won't be able to see it, but it comes on a small bobbin. We also have big cones of them, but for traveling, we travel with small bobbins all the time. So it just depends. I do have some triple-aught thread that I have sourced throughout my travels. Many years ago, I came across a big bunch of it. So I do have that, and I save that for, I think I used it on the pandemic doll.
And I'm looking at the containers of beads to Jessa Rae's on her left. Now, can you find all colors that you want? Do you have difficulty finding colors? Are there colors that you prefer when you're doing your beadwork?
You get what you can find with the seed beads. The micros, there's so far and few between where you can find them. They haven't been made for many years. And you're just lucky to find them. If you can find some, then good for you. We're always looking. I look and I ask, and I try to ask, the trading posts and people, and we have people that give us beads too. So we're very fortunate to have that happen.
So we were talking ahead of the program, and one of the questions I asked was, do you sketch out your designs, or how do you approach your design, let's say for a soft sculpture?
So for a soft sculpture, we usually, Jessa's and my mom will get together and we'll start talking about, oh, what would be nice to make, right? Or they'll have an idea of something that they wanted to make, inspired them to make something.
And it's so funny to me because it's almost like I call it beater language, because it's like we get each other. Like we can talk, and like, she may say something about an idea she had for one of the dolls that she wants to put on there, and it may not make sense to anybody else, but when she's talking, I'm like, oh yeah, that'll look good.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is like is talking with each other, is talking through things. My mom is a list maker, that's her process. We don't really do like heavy sketches. I'm not an illustrator. I feel like I doodle, and then everything else is just in here. I have to like really think through everything. But then somebody like my grandma, like she'll maybe do like a few guidelines when she starts a piece, and then she just does it.
Yeah, she used to talk a lot about her grandmas when she would go visit all her aunties and grandmas and stuff when she was small. And she was amazed because they never had patterns or designs laid out. And she works like that now. Like I never see her, when she's making like her big dresses or even the tiny doll dresses, it's always a guideline. She'll have a little guideline on there, and she goes from there. And
she just knows exactly what she wants to do, and it just like it's magic.
It comes out of her, and it's it's amazing how she does that. And she'll just go and lay it over, and then she'll know how long her design is going to be.
Her measurements
to keep them even. So like if she's making the doll dress top, where is that?
Oh, it's in the other room.
Oh, so she's working on a doll, soft sculpture right now that's going to be a fully beaded doll, and so she's been working on it throughout the pandemic.
Yeah,
and she's going to have it done that's her market piece, her go to town piece. So
you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. So she's been working on this thing, and the way she did it was amazing because she had her little guidelines, and then she was working out her designs, and then to get them even, she would hold them up like this, fold it back, and then she knew exactly where to start that other side to match so that it was even. And it's just amazing to me how she does that.
Yeah, it's really remarkable.
I think, Allison, I think we have a lot of questions from our visitors today. I know you're filtering through those. So.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, Jessa Rae, a lot of people have questions on your materials and sourcing those materials. And I think if you could talk about two specifically, one, the little pennies, did you make them or did you find them? And then two, the quills, and people are really interested to know if you know how those quills are sourced from the actual porcupine, if it's kind of the traditional way of scaring it, or other ways, or do you not know?
The quills come in varying ways, really. So I mean, the porcupines, growing up, like my mom would have, like her uncles, show up, and they'd be like, I found this porcupine, you know, he's fresh. You know, here you go, you can harvest the quills yourself.
She's talking about roadkills. And I love porcupines myself, and I feel like that for me was always the best way to get the quills, because his little life wasn't lost in vain, you know, and I can make use of him and help him continue on through with my pieces and stuff. So to me, I always felt blessed if I got blessed with a roadkill porcupine. And you know, just poor Jessa grew up with having me pick them up on the side of the road, you know, and we try to be good about it and do it in a good way. And we try to leave tobacco and, you know, say something for the little porcupine.
So I grew up, you know, I don't go anywhere without like kitchen gloves and paper sacks, bags. Like you get like a porcupine kit you carry around in your car, basically. Just because you never know, because that's the thing is, right, like you hate to see him, you know, wasted.
Yeah. And so it sounds, I know it's awful, sounds awful to people, but to me, I've always felt like that was a blessing. And I can remember being in a hotel, and we were there for a dance, for a powwow, and oh, it's my granddaughter. And my brother called me up and he said, "Are you there at the room? Are you at your hotel room?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I have something for you." And I said, "Okay." And so when he got there, he came in and he had a porcupine in a sack that he just saw on the side of the road. And he goes, I saw this and I got this for you. And I'm like, okay. So there I was in the hotel room, and I had all of my people with me, and everybody was getting ready. They were going to go to the dance and everything. So I ran to the supermarket really quickly, and I bought some kitchen gloves, because those are pretty good for not getting stabbed when you're processing a porcupine. And I had him in the bathtub, because that was all I could think to do, because I didn't want to waste him. So I plucked all his good quills and hair. We also collect the guard hair from the porcupines so we can make dance roaches and stuff. And that's one of my porcupine stories.
No, I think it's wonderful. I think it's great that you kind of utilize that material, and, you know, it doesn't go to waste, and you need it. And I think it's a great way to, you know, definitely be sustainable in that way. We're kind of running out of time, so I'm gonna ask one more question, because I'm also dying to know organization methods. I know you traveling, you probably have one specific method, and then at home, like, what is your system, you know, for keeping everything so organized?
I'm the list maker. I know, you know, after doing this for 30 plus years, over 35 years, I make a list. And so if I'm making a soft sculpture, I'll write the name of that soft sculpture, so I'm aware of what's going on with it. And then I just number down my list. And my first thing is the wire armature. So I have to build that first. And then the next thing is I have to create that doll body, so it gets wrapped like a mummy. And then the next thing, number 3, is it gets covered with the smoked buckskin. And number 4 is it gets a face and hair, right? So I just work down my list. And next is, you know what it is next?
Undergarments.
Undergarments. All of my soft sculpture pieces have undergarments. People always ask, and they always go, "What's under there?" I'm like, underwear. They have underwear.
And then too, like, you know, just keeping the materials. Like, my mom is one of the most well organized people, I think, because, you know, everything is, you know, separated by colors, by sizes, by materials. And she always knows exactly what she has and where it is at. I am younger and I am getting there.
I'm so glad I had you fooled all these years. I'm not that organized. I think I know where everything is at, and I pretty much have a grip on what I have and what I could use for what pieces. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. I had a comment from a member that said you should consider making a documentary of your family's work. It's so just beautiful and inspirational. So definitely consider that if you haven't already. I mean, I think we can all agree that we could sit here for another couple hours and just chat with you too. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, yeah, thank you. And this will be, like I said, put on YouTube in the next week. So you can go back and rewatch it and share with anyone you'd like. And thank you again. Your pieces are just so beautiful. And I love, just so thrilled that I get to go down and see them all the time. We get a lot of visitors who come through the museum asking to see the dolls, and they're just spectacular. So I can't wait to see. I won't be able to make it to Santa Fe this year, but I'll look online to see.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
So much.
Thank you so much. All right, well, everybody have a wonderful afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you at the museum soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.